Welcome to today's webcast. This call is being recorded. And now to begin the program, I'd like to introduce Tracy Cook.
Great, thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Supercast, Disaster Recovery, Mitigating Risks with Modern Technologies, presented by Redmond Magazine and sponsored by Arcserve and Unitrends. I'm Tracy Cook, and I'd like to welcome you all today. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping details. We'll have 3 presentations today. We'll have a Q&A session following the final presentation, so please submit your questions into the Q&A box on the left side of your console, and you can do that anytime during the event today, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. If you'd like to get a copy of the presentations, please click the green file folder icon at the bottom of your screen, and you'll have access to the presentations. And finally, this event is being archived and will be available for replay. You'll receive an email within the next 48 hours informing you when the replay is available. And now I'd like to talk a little about the Supercast. Our keynote speaker and moderator today is John Toigo. John is a 30-plus year IT veteran and an advisor on business automation strategy and technology with clients in both the vendor community and among technology users in businesses large and small. He has written 15 books to date, including 5 on the topic of business continuity and disaster recovery, plus he's helped over 100 companies develop, test, and in some cases, implement disaster recovery plans. John is a widely read columnist and blogger. He writes a regular column called The Info Struggle for Virtualization Review, as well as developing columns and articles for other trade press publications and for his own popular blog, drunkendata.com. John is the managing principal partner of Toigo Partners International and chairman of the Data Management Institute. He is a sought-after speaker, and we're so happy to have him with us today to not only moderate the event, but to give a great keynote speech. So, John, I'd like to pass it over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm blushing here, and thank you all who have taken time out of your Cinco de Mayo to attend today's presentation. It's on a topic nobody likes to talk about very much, disaster recovery. We'd all prefer to believe that things are just going to go swimmingly along in our data centers, and we never have to concern ourselves with the dark side of the technology dependency that we're creating within our companies. However, it's a fact of life, and like death and taxes, everybody's going to experience unplanned interruption events, and we need to be prepared for those. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit first. I entitled my presentation, Rock Meets Hard Place, Challenges for Effective Data Protection and Disaster Recovery in a Virtualized Software-Defined and Cloud-Based World. Those of you who know me or have heard me talk before recognize the fact that there's a little skepticism in my tone. I usually adopt that until I hear from real experts in the technology can reassure me that all of my concerns are without merit. And here to do that today will be Christophe Bertrand, who's a Vice President of Product Marketing at Arcserve. He's going to give a talk, and he will be followed by David LeClair, who is also a Vice President of Product Marketing, but for Unitrends, which is making its bones right now as a leading advocate of DR as a service, or DRAS. We'll be hearing from both of these folks after I give sort of the setup talk. Before I get going, though, I did want to make sure that everybody heard what Tracy said about submitting questions. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the event today. And, what I'd like you to do, if possible, is to record your questions during the sessions in the question tab that you have available in your interface. And the questions will be taken in turn after all sessions are complete. Any questions that we don't have time for, I've talked to each of the speakers, and they've said that if you direct the question to a specific speaker, they will make sure that you get a follow-up in email with a response to your question. So make sure you put those questions in, and make sure you annotate them to who you want to respond to them. I'll be delighted to answer questions as well. So put the name of the respondent or the company and then the question, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. All right, so let's get going with Rock Meets Hard Place. Challenges for effective data protection and disaster recovery in a virtualized, software-defined, and cloud-based world. You didn't know I could cram that much buzzword bingo into one title, but I tried to do it just for effect, actually. Now, I don't know about you, but everything I've been hearing about all this great new technology was basically focused on a couple of different ideas. It was going to make us agile. It was going to save money. But it was also supposed to simplify, make less complex our infrastructure, which was supposed to have a merit of simplifying data protection and disaster recovery techniques as well. Virtualization, for example. We all saw the slide decks from VMware and Hyper-V and all those other guys about basically we're going to take the server kit and the data and we were going to convert them into a highly mobilized virtual machine that could slide from one physical hosting system to another, basically without any kind of intervention from you, simple, effortless. AHA was going to trump DR. That's what we were told. You know, this high availability infrastructure was going to make the need for disaster recovery go away. We'll talk more about that canard a little later. Software-defined storage, which came about a couple of years ago. Actually, it dates back to 1993, but we won't tell anybody that. Was supposed to enable any-to-any data replication and mirroring. So it didn't matter whose kit you had. If you wanted to replicate, one box of Seagate hard drives to another box of HGST Western Digital hard drives, fine. If you wanted to go between one brand of flash to another, fine. It didn't matter. The software definition was going to basically allow us to lift all the logic off of the storage kit and reduce that kit down to its bare bones physical infrastructure. So irrespective of hardware brand, we were going to be able to protect the data that resided there. And then, of course, clouds were supposed to provide everything. I mean, they were supposed to give us a data center service and a platform by subscription, much like a hot site, if you think about it. A facility that was always on and always there and ready for use, and we could either use it in an active configuration with what we had in our own data center and what's known as hybrid cloud, private-public, or we could just use it on a pay-per-drink basis. Build your base, run your own data center, and buy your burst. Rent whatever extra services you needed from an external service provider. So, big question is, are we there yet? All right. I think that's a valid question to ask. Frankly, I'm going to use this supercast to try to get some answers from experts. My 4 objectives with this presentation are going to be, number 1, to give us sort of a sit rep. Where are we right now? Secondly, to contrast the architecture with the architecture, questioning the value case of some of these technologies and whether they're really able to deliver the goods that they're promising to deliver. Thirdly, identify the challenges. How are we going to be able to minimize the foibles that are inherent in some of these technologies right now and leverage what their capabilities are that can actually assist us in doing a better job with data protection and disaster recovery. And then finally, we're going to set the stage for the expert speakers. So I'm going to start off with my sit rep, and actually it's not like this presentation is going to be divided into 4 sections. It's all kind of blended together. You'll get the idea. Okay, first of all, software-defined data centers and clouds have certainly gained a lot of popularity. You can ask your favorite analyst about it. The latest reports I've read from Gartner and IDC and everybody and his kid sister basically say that small firms are big on clouds. They're outsourcing a lot of stuff to clouds. Theoretically, to take advantage of the availability of resources they wouldn't otherwise have access to, either for cost constraints or because they're shorthanded with staff. So a small firm can actually perform a lot like his larger cousins if he's able to access the resources he needs from a cloud. Now, medium-sized firms are embracing software-defined architecture internally, and they're looking a little bit at some public cloud services, certainly all the data drop boxes and things. We've seen those making big inroads into medium-sized companies so that people who are increasingly mobile staff will be able to access their files and share their files and do a lot of work that way. The problem there, obviously, is with security, and the security, not necessarily of the apps themselves, but of the mobile devices that they're sitting on, which are inherently high risk. And then thirdly, you've got large firms. Large firms are going for hybrid. That's the ideal that IBM and most of the big three-letter acronyms are pushing right now, the idea of a hybrid data center. I'll show you an illustration of one a little later on. But anyway, it's a brave new world, and we're supposed to all get ready to enjoy all the benefits, the cost savings that are going to accrue to this, the improvements in agility, our ability to respond more quickly to whatever a business process requires when it changes, and of course resiliency. We're going to be able to build a very, very durable infrastructure that can be accessed on an ongoing basis and that has a fallback if it becomes unavailable for some reason. That's what it's supposed to be. Now, is it? Here's a look, as I promised, at the hybrid cloud data center. Basically, in that lower green box, you have what are known as systems of engagement. These are mobile apps that run on mobile devices. Think of a retailer. You can use your smartphone or your tablet or your phablet or whatever, go on Amazon, find the item you want from Amazon.com, put in an order. The order goes up to what are known as systems of interaction. This is primarily where you're going to find a lot of use of hypervisor-based computing. That's the primary locus for that right now. They're going to shunt that request for a product and the credit card information that's accompanying it over probably to the box that's on the left, the light blue box, called Systems of Insight. Systems of Insight are analytics, and they're running on x86 cluster infrastructure, usually Hadoop, Spark, something like that. They have software running on them that basically is going to do very fast analytics on what the person's credit history is like, whether they've received other requests to use a credit card from that individual that maybe are far-flung locations like Honolulu versus Montreal versus New York or whatever, so they can determine whether there's any credit card fraud involved. And they may even do a quick check with the credit card authorization company to make sure that this guy has enough money in his bank to buy the product. And then they quickly respond back with that information and qualify the request that's being made from that little phablet. At the same time, they're probably going to look at the customer profile, and they're going to determine, wow, what is this guy buying, and what else can we recommend for people like him who bought things of this type in the past? What upsell can we do? And they will try to upsell them. And that kind of advanced marketing edge is often provided by the system of insight. And then once the order is confirmed and the credit information is confirmed and everything's happy, they're going to shoot it off to the back end, which is the top box there, system of record. These are the legacy systems in most shops. These are not necessarily virtualized at all because nobody wants to slow them down, which is an unfortunate side effect many times of virtualizing an app. And they're running usually some relational database management systems behind them for finance, for ERP, for logistics, for accounting. This is how you find out how your item's going to be delivered. You get it picked from inventory. You have all the financial arrangements, all the shipping is all taken care of by these systems. And then there's increasing chit-chat that comes back from systems of record back to the systems of interaction so that you can keep track of your order every step of the way. All right, so you got the idea. That's your basic data center, and increasingly they're using things like infrastructure as a service as a means to economize on that on-premise data center. But they're also reaching out to public cloud services. First, it was to get you more elbow room for resources that you needed. If you needed more compute power or you needed more storage infrastructure or whatever, you'd be able to source that from an infrastructure as a service cloud service provider, IaaS. Recently, we've seen a big uptick in the number of companies offering DR as a service, disaster recovery as a service, DRAS. And the idea is that you could either store your backup copies of your data in the DRAS cloud, or you could actually stand up infrastructure in that cloud if you ever needed to, if yours went south on you. And you could either do that on an ad hoc basis when you needed to, which would basically resolve a lot of pricing issues that would normally accompany having a redundant facility, or you have the facility operating all the time and you're doing some clustering, active clustering over to a cloud service provider as well. There are a lot of different models there, and basically what we're looking at now is a combination of those two layers of services, the on-premise cloud and the public cloud. All right. Let's move forward here. All right. Now, virtualizing applications in the operating systems was supposed to make them better at continuity. Part of that software-defined data center story was that you were going to use hypervisor software to abstract the control layer from the hardware layer. And we started first with servers and the VMwares and the Hyper-Vs and the KVMs and those guys. And basically that was going to allow you to encapsulate the workload into its own little container. And in this container, which was called a virtual machine, you were going to be able to slide that virtual machine from one physical host to another physical host to another physical host, just with template cut and paste, if you will. And that would enable you very quickly to recover from any interruption that occurred at a server level. And basically that machine clustering plus data mirroring was touted as the next big thing in high availability, that everybody was going to be able to stand up at least two systems that were identical and would be able to host the same workload. And you could either host on both systems concurrently in an active cluster, and one failed, the whole workload just simply shifts to the other machine. Or you could have one in sort of a standby mode and just do mirroring back and forth and have a heartbeat detector. And if the primary system went down, you fail over to the secondary system. And then finally, that led to generally an assertion that I've always found idiotic, but it's been put out there in so many different articles. In fact, one of the leading analyst companies actually entitled one of their reports, HA Trumps DR, the idea that most disasters are local and logical, so there's no need for all that disaster recovery stuff that portends to recover your environment outside of your data center. In fact, most of the time, all you need is a redundant system sitting next to it. There may or may not be some truth to that, but the fact is that you're going to have a capital D disaster at some point, too. Now, how are we going to protect these virtual machines? Well, again, actually, here's the breakdown of what I just asserted. They say that most disasters are logical or local to a disk. So you might have a ransomware attack, or you might have a virus of some sort, or user error, application problem that results in some data being corrupted. To recover from those disasters, you don't have to abandon your facility. If you have a copy of the data nearby that you can fail over to, fine, you can come back up with that. And that's true. That accounts for about 65% of downtime annually, according to a number of different researchers who have been done into that. Oftentimes, they take that 65%, they join it together with what's in the orange box, which is scheduled maintenance, where you shut a system down for a period of time. That's about 30% of the downtime that companies experience annually. So you put those two together and you say, well, look, 95% of downtime can be resolved simply by doing localized clustering with failover and maybe some of this vMotion stuff. Only 5% of the downtime are the big D disasters, the stuff that we see on CNN, from one end of the widescreen television to the other in continuous loops for at least 24 to 48 hours. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, chemical disasters. We haven't had any big biological events yet. Let's see, nuclear disasters, as we saw Fukushima. Anyway, but those are only 5% of disasters. So these guys must play in Vegas a lot, and they say, look, play the percentages. You can build out a pretty good disaster recovery plan that will account for 95% of your disaster potentials just by doing some virtualization. That's kind of nonsensical, because all it takes is one capital D disaster in that 5% of downtime to really spoil your day. So I'm not entirely sold on this notion. To me, the proper disaster recovery plan is one that incorporates the broadest possible outage scenario, and that can be implemented in a modular way in accordance to lesser emergencies. So you should have some flexibility down in the bowels of the plan, but the plan itself needs to be focused at the layer of a full wipeout. And if you're not doing it that way, you're probably doing it wrong. Okay, there are other issues as well. When you look at the way that folks are using hypervisor-based computing right now, it's a very significant percentage of your workload has probably been virtualized. It's basically I think the numbers I've read from analysts recently is about 75% of workload is virtualized, is containerized inside a virtual machine at this point. However, the other 25% is not virtualized at all. And those are your mission-critical applications that nobody wants to virtualize because they're afraid they're going to slow them down, high-performance transaction processing applications. Now, eventually we may get there. That those may be virtualized as well. But, in fact, there's a big movement right now into in-memory databases that I'm watching pretty closely. But it's not the same thing as creating a virtual machine in most cases. There are also other competing technologies coming down the pike, containers and Dockers and things like that, that are worth keeping an eye on. For the time being, though, what I'm very impressed by is the fact that in that 75% of virtualized workload, there's actually diversification occurring. In the last survey research I read of about 500 companies in the U.S. and Europe, companies are deciding that they don't want to be, dedicated to a particular hypervisor vendor and beholden to that vendor. They're afraid of lock-ins. So what they're doing is they're embracing multiple hypervisors. And unfortunately, each one of the hypervisor vendors seems to have decided they want to be the next IBM circa 1977 and run the data center. So they're basically trying to configure their own software-defined technology underneath the hypervisor and make sure that the data cannot be shared between different stacks of hardware and software organized by hypervisor. And, of course, convergence and hyperconvergence is resurrecting some old problems of data siloing, where I was just on the phone with one vendor and I said, how do I share data or share the storage space that's opened up by this other hypervisor with your data? And they said, oh, well, that's easy. You get rid of all that other vendor stuff and you just standardize on us. We're back to where we were before Samba. With trying to exchange data between, Sun Microsystems in those days and Microsoft, where you call up Sun and they'd say, oh, well, you can fix that problem. You just get rid of all that Microsoft stuff. We have a problem here, and what we're doing is increasing the number of targets that we have to protect, and each target is a silo of technology and oftentimes has its own recovery requirements. So, and orchestrating, services between all of these different silos is becoming increasingly challenging, and that orchestration technology is very much still in its infancy. So I don't think that there's a huge solution here. I did want to catch you up in case you're not following this software-defined storage and hyper-converged infrastructure stuff that is bombarding us on a daily basis in our Twitter accounts and our LinkedIn pages and Facebook and everywhere else. Basically, the concept is pretty simple. Software-defined storage is supposed to be you take all the value-add software off of an array controller, and instead you migrate all that data onto a server. And you create a software-defined storage stack that's a bunch of services that you can then apply to any number of storage kits that are direct attached to that server. That's essentially what you're trying to abstract the value-add software services away from the storage controller and instantiate them instead on a server-side software stack. That's what software-defined storage means. People say that it's new, but actually it's returned to 1993 when IBM did system-managed storage on a mainframe, and Digital Equipment Corporation had similar technology for several of their products. So there's nothing new under the sun. This is just another example of that. Now, hyperconverged infrastructure is a continuation of the software-defined storage concept, except what they're doing is they're pre-integrating software-defined storage stacks directly on hardware. So you've got a bunch of server vendors who are tired of being kicked around and told that they're nothing but commodity. They want to create something that differentiates them from their competitors, so they're making alliances with third-party software-defined storage vendors, and they're gluing their storage and their servers together with the SDS software, and then selling that finished pre-integrated product as a hyper-converged infrastructure appliance. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's certainly an easy way to go deploy a bunch of technology, except that most of the products that are out there right now are hypervisor-centric, meaning that they only work with a VMware, or they only work with Hyper-V, or they only work with KVM, or whatever. Most of them enforce identicality, which means that you can't just replicate data from one hyper-converged appliance to another. You need to have the identical appliance and it has to be using an identical software stack from the hypervisor down to the SDS stack. And of course, your management methods are going to differ fairly widely. Some people leverage the hypervisor's management console as the means to manage the underlying storage. Others have a standalone capability to manage a whole bunch of their appliances from a single pane of glass. Some will allow the appliance to be used behind different hypervisors and still can manage them all in common. And then just a couple of them are actually very much hypervisor and hardware agnostic, so that they'll support just about anything with a common management layer. That's where I think the whole industry eventually needs to go if we're going to actually have the golden dream realized from this technology. However, for now, what we've got is a lot of siloed technology and everybody lining up at the vendor booths at your favorite trade show to get the tattoo for that particular vendor's technology. Everything's gotten a little bit tribal out there, and I think that's creating more challenges than solutions for disaster recovery. Now, that's resulting, again, in a proliferation of recovery targets. There are these in-memory databases that are mostly non-virtualized, and they're very much a challenge to back up because an in-memory database doesn't like to be quiesced and paused in order to take a snapshot of changed data. We have to do that periodically because you have to unload it and then reload it into memory whenever you need to do a reorg or you need to do some data consolidation or whatever. We're still working the bugs out of that technology right now. And then, of course, we have problems of siloing not only by equipment but also by workload, and by what software-defined stack they're using, and by which cloud service provider you're using, because a lot of those have embraced a particular hypervisor vendor or a particular SDS stack or whatever, and you have to choose one who has the same sort of kit or the same sort of model or architecture that you have in order to use them as a recovery environment. And then, of course, those guys need to replicate their data off their system somewhere, so you're just as beholden not only to the networks that connect you to your cloud service provider, but you have to be concerned about what kind of networks they have among themselves. How are they replicating data to their secondary data centers or whatever? And of course, I already mentioned identicality. That's a huge problem. We thought we were getting away from that, but it's actually reasserted itself in a big way. When you don't have exact identicality, for example, in a vSAN environment between two different servers from VMware, chances are your mirror is not going to work. It isn't going to even operate. And then there are also capacity sharing issues and a lack of storage resource management generally, which is like opening the door for disaster. I mean, that a lot of people think that doing this software-defined storage eliminates the need for the protection of the underlying physical infrastructure, and nothing could be farther from the truth. So, sorry, I had to take a sip. I was losing my voice here for a second. All right, and then you add in the conventional, the carbon robot issues. Disaster recovery is, of course, always touted whenever you do a survey by IT managers or by front office people. It's one of their top things. They really want to do this. They want to do DR correctly, and however, secretly, they wish they could just outsource the whole mess. And vendor marketeers, particularly in the DRAS space, are happy to oblige them with that. Secondly, they are ignoring disaster prevention through proactive infrastructure monitoring. There's a lack of infrastructure resource management in most shops today. I've been talking to the people who are doing software-defined storage, and they're saying, well, we don't actually manage the underlying kit. We do what's known as faux path monitoring, which is basically keeping our eye on how long it takes for a transaction to complete its cycle out to the storage and with the acknowledgement coming back. And if there's any delay in that or between servers, if it's a failover cluster, if there's any disruption in that or it slows down, we know we've got a problem somewhere. Well, that doesn't really solve the problem of resource monitoring. Resource monitoring would go to the level of monitoring a disk drive to see if Smart is giving you an indication the drive is going to fail in the near future, and you need to do something about it, and any number of other examples. There's also a failure to perform what I think is probably the most essential task of disaster recovery, which is the upfront analysis, what some people call a business impact analysis. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then finally, people aren't testing their plans. which is the equivalent of having no plan at all. In fact, some of the early DRAS providers that are out there have never done disaster recovery in their lives. They don't know what it really entails. They're repositioning some software they bought third party and making it available to you so you can do online backup or whatever, but they have no clue how to support a customer's ongoing test regime to make sure that their plan is valid. Now, let me quickly jump into this point I was going to make about upfront analysis. Nobody likes to do it because you have to talk to people. Okay, you go to senior management, you ask them what are the most mission-critical business processes in the company. They usually can list them off for you off the top of their head. Then you get a line of business managers over each one of those business processes, and you ask them what applications and databases are you guys using in order to perform this important work for the company. And then you go to the information technology department and you find out what data and infrastructure and applications actually support that line of business, because let's be honest, the fact is that data and infrastructure and applications have absolutely zero value until you relate them back to the business process that they support. If the business process is considered critical, it's going to have a very high tangible or intangible cost to the company if it's ever interrupted. Well, then the application, infrastructure, and data that support that business process inherit that criticality, like so much DNA from the business process. So if you don't know those relationships, chances are you aren't going to know how to protect anything. What you should be able to do is identify, at least at a data level, what data supports critical applications, that's critical data, and what services do you need to protect that data. You may need some sort of continuous data protection, some sort of ongoing I/O by I/O record that you can go backwards through in order to retrieve the status or the state of the data to a particular earlier point, particularly as a protection against ransomware. And then you're going to need maybe mirroring for real-time failover of one bucket of data to another bucket of data, and replication outside the building to maybe a DRAS service provider, a hot site, an alternate facility of your own, so that you can move out of harm's way if you get one of those big geophysical disasters that could happen. And then, vital data will have perhaps a different set of services that are required for its protection. Important data, another set. Archival data, maybe very, very low-level protection. Heck, that's a great solution for tape in archival. So anyway, you have to do this criticality assessment to understand what it is you're trying to protect and what kinds of services that you need. Without that, you see that there's a proliferation of data protection tools. I've been in shops where people have 15 binders from different vendors, and each one is a separate tool that they've deployed for a specific application, for a specific hypervisor, for a specific type of server, etc. And that's a problem. You're chasing rainbows there. Secondly, you got platform incompatibilities that aren't identified. So when you think you're mirroring, you're not really mirroring. When you think you've got a cluster, you can't really fail over. And you can't fail back because that was never provided as part of the solution. And then you got different cloud service providers that represent different hypervisor software stacks. And so planners need to be concerned about how they're going to get data and connection back and forth to those service providers. And then they also have to be concerned if that service provider, let's assume you have a hurricane and that service provider's facilities are maxed out, but he promises to bring you up in a secondary facility that he also has. How's he replicating his data there, and what's the state of the data there? You have to extend the supply chain of disaster recovery to incorporate a whole bunch of different vendors. And then, the plans ultimately become much more expensive than they need to be. And that kind of sours the whole concept of disaster recovery planning in the front office, where budgetary approval is made and broken. No bucks, no Buck Rogers, right? So those are, some of the big problems. And frankly, I think if you're ignoring the capital disasters, there's one that is going to come bite you, and you better be prepared for it. I mean, if the analysts are at all right, they're saying there's going to be growth of data in the 1 to 60 zettabyte range. I mean, the chart on the left here, if you can read it, it's kind of an eye chart, but download the stack, you can see it. The IDC is projecting 60 zettabytes of data by 2020. Now, all of that won't be in your shop, But the fact is, I was just having lunch with one of the major cloud service providers, and they're scratching their heads wondering how they're going to even cope with the storage of that data. 1 zettabyte equals 1,000 exabytes. The total manufacturing capacity of the disk drive industry per year is about 780 exabytes. The total manufacturing capacity of the flash market per year is about 500 exabytes. So how are you going to store 60 zettabytes if you're limited to just solid state and spinning rust? I don't know, and frankly, you're going to have to start getting very used to the concept of going back in time and using tape again in order to just have space to store all the bits. If you don't, you're going to be discarding data, and that's an open invitation to a disaster at some point. Now, with so much data, you're going to have to open up a dialogue. What data really needs to be retained and for how long, and you're going to have to start getting sincere about making sure that you're managing the data properly. Secondly, you're going to have to implement tiering so that you can copy your data from fast storage with limited capacity to a higher and higher and higher capacity, and then ultimately over to clouds. In order to deal with the data deluge. Now, cloud is not a form of storage. I wish people quit saying that. It's just a service delivery model. What smart cloud operators are doing now is they're deploying tape so that they've got huge repositories for your data. Now, whether you just here's another question. Right now, if you talk to the guys who are doing big data analytics, a lot of them were born out of the clustered supercomputer world, where they had a limitless budget to deploy more and more and more nodes of technology to their clusters. Now, the question, and they have this disdain for something called data friction, which is any sort of data copy. I've been talking to more and more of these guys who are saying that you shelter your data in place. You don't make a copy anywhere else. You just put all the data that isn't being accessed on a disk drive and power that drive down, and that's shelter in place. I've never heard such a screwball idea in my life, but hey, I'm willing to entertain the discussion if somebody can explain to me why that's such a good idea. Now, and then also you have to look at cloud-based archiving going forward, and you're going to have to look at tape again. I had a conversation over in London last year with a kid came up to me afterwards. We were talking about disaster recovery, and he said, wow, this tape technology, I've never heard of that. And I said, what do you do for a living? He says, I'm a virtualization administrator. I said, oh, well, that explains why you don't know anything about tape. He said, I want to know one thing. Why do you have to build a room full of books to stand up a tape system? I said, I beg your pardon. And he said, well, you kept referring to a tape library. I'm not kidding. This was an actual conversation. So there's a whole generation of lost youth who don't know anything about tape, and we better reacquaint them with it for a disaster recovery scenario going forward. Now, we're told that the data is evolving, and we've all seen evolution. If you've ever seen this chart, I love this. It starts with the Xerox machine. It goes up to universal email, and then we started declining into instant messenger, LinkedIn, MySpace, and Facebook. The fact is that we need to get more robust software tools to manage the backup of highly differentiated workloads. We need to appreciate better the business process locus of disaster recovery, and the fact that data's value can only be understood in that context. Thirdly, we need DR as a service vendors to step up to the plate with business impact analysis services and testing as part of their service contract, not just providing software for backup. And finally, we need to ask whether companies or service providers are taking steps to blunt the impact of this zettabyte apocalypse that's on the horizon. What do they propose to help make sure that that doesn't result in exactly the kinds of disasters that we're trying to avoid? So now, with all that doom and gloom, I'm going to end on an up note. We're lucky today to have experts on the relevant technology for data protection and disaster recovery on this Supercast to assuage our concerns. And the first guy I want to introduce to you is Christophe Bertrand. He's Vice President of Product Marketing for Arcserve, and he joined the now independent Arcserve company in 2013 to lead product marketing and to launch the award-winning Arcserve Unified Data Protection UDP solution. Christophe has about 20 years of experience in services, software, and high-end systems. He spent most of his career in data storage and data protection with companies such as Legato Systems, Veritas, Maxtor, Hitachi Data Systems, and Data Direct Networks. And Christophe has spoken at many disaster recovery and technology events. Through the years, he's authored numerous white papers, articles, and blogs on the subject. And I want to welcome Christophe and hand over the presentation reins to you.
Thank you very much, John. I have to say this was a great presentation, fantastic graphics, and more importantly, very important content that I think brings up a number of issues that we've also identified at Arcserve as very critical to our customers and moving forward to the market at large. So let me tell you a little bit more about Arcserve, because if you're new to the IT space, you probably don't know us. If you've been in this business for a while and you've been maybe even in backup for a while, you will remember the name. We've been actually around in multiple forms, if you will, through the years for well over 20 years. It's a company that is now independent. We were most recently part of CA Technologies. We carved it out. Our CEO, Mike Kress, was the architect of that effort, and I joined the business about a year before we carved it out, and I've been through some fantastic time here with Arcserve. I have to say, it's nice to be an independent company. When you're looking at vendors, as you're looking at building your data protection infrastructure, one of the things that you should really ask yourself is, hang on, is this vendor going to be around in the future? Who's their backer? Is this just the fad of the day? Who are these vendors? And I'm going to put all of my data, my processes, I'm going to tie myself to someone. I need to understand who they are. So we've built a great business. Our business has now both 45,000 total customers. We have about 20,000 customers with UDP. UDP is our unified data protection solution. So John, you talked about unifying the processes and the technologies. This is exactly what we do with UDP. Our tagline, which is really our trademark actually, is assured recovery. Our focus is really to help recover your environment, your data, your systems, regardless of their circumstances. And I do agree wholeheartedly with the fact that a lot of the recoveries happen locally. It's not always the end of the world, luckily, and it's good to have a good, strong first line of defense. We have a global presence. We've been a global company again for many years, and more importantly, recently, with our UDP technology, which we launched in May of 2014, we have acquired a lot of recognition in the industry. We're literally winning every virtualization award there is in terms of protection of virtualized environments. And our CEO recently received a great award in Minnesota, where our company is now headquartered. So with this being said, we're doing really well. We're happy to be independent. Our business is growing. Again, look at the vendor closely before you invest. We're here to stay, we're here to win it. And for those of us who knew us in the back, well, it's back to the future. In the past, it's back to the future. So let me talk a little bit more about what we hear and see. It's actually, I would say, very complementary to what John was just talking about. And the reason why I want to stress this out is, before we get into more of the technology we have and how it works, what we do, understanding the problem gets you much closer to the solution. It sounds pretty obvious, but many times it's forgotten. So first of all, what we see is what we call the triple play. It's an increasingly complex set of environments that combine virtual, physical, and cloud. Hybrid is another term I've heard and used, but let's not worry about the term. Fundamentally, if you look closely at your own environments, you will see that you have some servers that you will, as John was pointed out, you will not virtualize because you probably care about too much about performance. It's critical. So nobody's 100% virtualized. Maybe it will happen. I don't believe it will. It's like tape. Was supposed to die and go away. It's still around. Still has a great future, we think, in different type of use cases. And John is right. Mainframe. It's mainframe all over again. Mainframe is still around. Well, realistically, my point is this. You're going to have to deal with a complex environment, which is this equation. You have some physical, you have some virtual, probably a lot of virtual. You have to play with public clouds, maybe private clouds. We think whatever you do for data protection is going to be something that has to understand those 3 dimensions. This is with a backdrop of essentially this exponential growth of data. And I promise I did not copy these points from John's presentation. We came to this independently, but the point is that that's not going to stop. There's only one statistic about the future. Data is going to keep on growing, and that's going to be absolutely, that's something you have to understand for your own environment. I didn't know about the 60 zettabytes, whatever that number is, just too many zeros for me to even understand what that means, but it's definitely not good news. Actually, I would say that's probably the biggest disaster that's going to happen to you, data growth, if you don't plan for it. So that has driven us, for example, to develop some very advanced deduplication techniques to really compress the amount of storage you use to store your data, your backup data. Also, the fact that really the idea is that you want your systems not to be unavailable. You want this continuous availability. This is something we have built into our technology. We believe it's about continuous availability. It's not about backup. It's not even about recovery. It's about never failing, at least visibly, so that you can keep serving data, processes, feed your internet, whatever the transactions, whatever the case may be. So this notion that high availability is actually something you need, and you need it locally, of course, but there are also ways to leverage distant sites or cloud in this context. So cloud, obviously, very important as a source and a destination for data. We'll talk more about that. Public cloud, private cloud, specialty clouds, lots of clouds. Fundamentally, it's a great way to optimize your what I call this equation, and more importantly, you can leverage it to your advantage from a data protection and disaster recovery perspective. So a lot of the features that you used to see in the past in the enterprise, the high-end enterprise, and I played in that space, so I know these well. Well, they're now making their way down market. They're actually what you expect. Your service levels are such that today, regardless of your company size, you're probably on 24 hours. Your business you may be transacting 24 hours a day with the internet. Your requirements are actually very stringent, and I think back to the earlier points, you need to understand that. And you realize very quickly that you have a number of critical or mission-critical, if not business-critical systems and data sets that you need to protect. And, well, what the most complex deployments were many years ago in the enterprise space are now becoming a lot simpler and easier to get, but the requirements are very similar. Very low recovery point objectives and low recovery time objectives. So unifying all of these processes into and technologies under one a single pane of glass is critical. That's what we deliver with our solution. That's really what characterizes us as a solution. And remember, tape is not dead. We'll talk about it in a minute. So these are some of the, again, critical trends that we see and hear that drive us to build the best possible solution. A couple more points here that I think are very important to understand. Clearly the fact that, I'm going to go straight to the bottom line here, literally is, you got more stuff to do and you got less budget, okay? You only going to have more data, more complex workloads, more virtual machines. This is not going to mean you're going to get more budget. So you have to be able to do a lot more with a lot less. And also you have to be able to use tools that don't require a PhD to be able to use them. So usability, ease of use, the automation of certain processes has to happen for you to be successful. So all of these points that I'm listing here, and please take your time offline, download the presentation and take a look at these and look at all of these. I mean, you could literally build a whole plan just based on understanding these, because essentially this is what drives a lot of the evolutions space of data protection these days. So I want to cover the Arcserve solution, the Arcserve Unified Data Protection Software. Let me first start by saying this. This is not just software. We also offer, and I'll talk about it in a minute, an appliance. So, and also the Arcserve Disaster Recovery as a Service cloud option. So we have a number of ways for you to consume the technology, which is very important. We're really very much like our solution, our software is like an SLA dial, a service level agreement dial. It's not like the old style backup solutions. It's really one that comprises a workflow of data protection actions, and you can really make it very granular. You can create data protection plans. Think of it as gold, silver, bronze, whatever levels you want to create, where you can really protect more critical applications and systems better than those that are less critical, because it just makes sense that there are some more critical applications, and those deserve the highest possible level of availability versus maybe servers or certain endpoints that candidly, if you back them up once a day, you're happy. And that's fine. This understanding that John was talking about is something you can easily put into words, into a plan, and into an actionable data protection strategy with Arcserve UDP. It's enterprise class in its feature set. The feature functions are absolutely amazing. Just to give you a few, because you may be looking for these as you think about creating your checklist, we have amazing deduplication. I want to talk about deduplication. Data growth is a problem. That's just the source you got to deal with. But remember, if you're going to back it up, you better be smart about it. Don't back it up 25 times. And when you protect it, you got to shrink it. Okay, and we have deduplication that is great. We have actually some screenshots you can see from our customers on our blog, on our website, that will show you how much we've actually compressed, how much we've actually reduced data. I don't believe in, there are a number of what I call the BS ratios out there for deduplication. Let me be clear, deduplication has been around for a while. The modern way of doing it is to do global deduplication, source side, and more importantly, that means that if your source is X, your destination has to be a fraction of that. Okay, so go take a look. We have a number of examples. One of them that comes to mind, we have this customer with, I think, 0.5 petabyte of data that has been essentially shrunk onto 13 terabytes. So that makes it a very interesting value proposition, because now you can deploy appliances which have a finite capacity in your environment, and make that easy to roll out. More importantly, it saves you money. Storage is expensive, even if prices keep coming down. At the same time, you still need to manage the data growth. So in combination, deduplication has become the most critical piece that you need to pressure test as you go select a solution out there. I would also say that another important point in this feature set is simplicity. Being easy to use. You don't need a PhD to use our solution, but at the same time, you can double-click and triple-click if you're an expert and you're looking to do something more specific. So this granularity is still available, but we've kept it simple. By the way, we support tape extremely well. We have, obviously, a heritage in that space. We support complex step environments. We don't think tape is a primary destination for backup data. That's fine, but it's definitely got a big play in long-term retention and archive. We understand it very well. That's where we have a ton of expertise on that, from years in the space. I would say there are many other vendors who struggle with that. We support physical and virtual. We support cross-hypervisor type of migrations and recoveries. There are lots of things we do with this solution. Embedded in the software is replication. It's not an added charge, and it works extremely well. It allows you to really take your data and replicate it to multiple sites. So this software, and there's plenty more, so I will not get into the long pitch here, but I just want to let you know this is enterprise class. This has a ton of great capabilities, but also it has ease of use. So it's available as an appliance. We have a whole portfolio of appliances. some of our, we've been extremely successful with it. When we first became independent, we only had the software piece. About 6 months later, we rolled out our appliance. It's been very successful, great business for us, and our customers love it. I remember sitting down with one of our first customers in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, who is the IT lead for a credit union, and I mean, he was just so happy with how quickly it was deployed, how literally the first week he was able to provide for recovery services to someone who had made a big mistake of deleting a critical document, and was able to get that back. Of course, it's a financial institution, so there's a lot of focus that's placed on data protection. So we have a whole, again, series of models. Just know that our appliances are, because of the efficiency of our deduplication, for example, with a 30 terabyte onboard storage, if you will, a 30 terabyte appliance will actually protect a source of 90 terabytes, and that's a conservative number. Of course, your mileage will vary, but I would just, as you look at picking a solution, understand the source to storage ratio, and what matters is how much source you can squeeze onto how much storage, understanding you're paying for that storage one way or the other. So something that really, again, makes a big difference. I won't bore you with the specs and the details. We have all of those on our website, but recently we have a customer that bought a bunch of these for a very decentralized sort of field office type of scenario where they protect dozens of field offices, and then it's centralized through the replication, the backup to a central server. Our appliances and our software are interoperable, and more importantly, they work with our cloud service. So I'll talk about cloud because public cloud is also an area where we do a number of things. But we've developed essentially a disaster recovery as a service option. Whether you're an appliance customer or a software customer, you may want to have. You don't want to spend necessarily of the upfront capital to set up a disaster recovery center, or for part of your infrastructure, you may just want to have a cloud option. This is what it is. It's very easy to understand the terms and conditions. We keep it simple. We give you the ability to invoke the site for disaster recovery testing, which John mentioned. I could not agree more. It's all about testing over and over again. And of course, should you have a big problem, you can leverage it. And, we support, again, the UDP technology in it, so it's all interoperable. And whether you're protecting physical servers or virtual servers, whatever the case may be, you can leverage the cloud option here. So the way the architecture works, or a way to sort of describe how it all works together, is this, and this would be what I will finish with to keep us on time here, is, first of all, your first line of defense, again, John, could not agree more with you, is the local one. It's where you can see this little logo that says RPS. That's the recovery point server. That's the core component of our Arcserve solution. And we can back up locally your virtual machines. We can send data off to tape. We can back up your physical machines. We support a number of options, including a high availability module. All of this in a fully integrated interface. By the way, when you use our interface, you don't need to go back and call another one or something that may not be fully integrated. We've really integrated everything into the one interface, single pane of glass experience. And then what we can do is we have great replication. Our replication is fantastic. It's optimized. It works really, really well. That's one of the things our customers tell us all the time. And you can go replicate to a number of sites. For example, you could be, as I was just explaining, you could maybe have some branch offices where you put appliances. Again, it's an option. You could put servers if you prefer, but hey, why not use a small appliance? You can protect the data locally and the systems locally, and you can send that to the primary data center. By definition, creating right there a disaster recovery type of schema. And in many cases, we see customers leveraging an actual DR center, disaster recovery site. Maybe it's through a managed service provider. There are a number of possibilities here. And at some point, you will probably want to send some of the data off to tape. And again, we support it. So you can see here, you can replicate to multiple sites. You can cross-replicate. You can cross-protect. You have many permutations. There's no limitation to our replication. And again, the fact that we support a number of environments, including Linux, extremely well. Windows, we're easy to deploy, easy to troubleshoot if you're a partner, because a lot of our partners prefer Windows, find it easier to work with. But again, we support Linux and Windows, so very happy with whatever choice that our customers make. And finally, let's talk about public cloud and cloud in general. You'll see we mention ourselves in the cloud component. That's that cloud layer, that disk to cloud, or to cloud to tape. I mean, again, so many permutations. We support public cloud environments. You can see the logos here. We believe that ultimately customers may start with a public cloud, may decide to expand that footprint for a number of reasons, or may decide to just add other capabilities. We want to be open and flexible. We want to keep it simple, and we want to give customers choice. And for these reasons, we really have a very complete solution designed for cloud, designed for disaster recovery and assured recovery, and that supports virtual environments as well as physical environments, great deduplication, and by the way, ransomware, great protection against that, because I just was looking at an email from a customer that was hit by a ransom, and essentially was able to recover the affected systems from our UDP backup and got out of trouble that way. So there are so many things that could happen. I don't believe that the end of the world will happen, and if it does, we probably don't care, but you're right, John. Logical issues, all of these issues could happen. Having flexibility, having the ability to move data around, having the ability to optimize storage in a process, these are the things we do. And I believe that any opportunity to change your data protection infrastructure or to unify it is an opportunity to improve, and ultimately it improves your business. So I don't want to spend too much time here. I'd like to turn it back over to you, John.
Well, thank you very much, David. That was an extremely intelligent and on-point presentation, and I've written down a few questions I'm sure that the audience has as well. I'd like to encourage everybody again, as you listen to these presentations, put your questions in the question tab so we can have a very good Q&A period afterwards. Now, we're going to turn to our second speaker of the day here. This is David LeClair. Well, it's a representation of David LeClair in two dimensions. David LeClair is a Vice President of Product Marketing at Unitrends. He has 25 years of experience developing and marketing servers and various types of technology devices, software, and services in the computing and communications industries. Basically, he's held a role in strategy development, product management, marketing, and engineering, so he's done it all. Dave is a frequently referenced expert on cloud and business continuity, and prior to Unitrends, he was Senior Director of Strategy and Product Management at Stratus, a company that's near and dear to my heart, as a matter of fact. And he's held senior executive roles also at Avaya, NEC, and Internet Appliance Network. So, David, welcome, and let's go to your presentation now.
Great. Thank you very much, John. So I think you did a great job kind of setting up the topic for today, and I really wanted to kind of play off of a lot of what you said in your intro. We certainly are in an age where digital transformation is affecting literally every aspect of our lives. And as a result of that, we're seeing not only this explosion of data everywhere, but we are seeing all the emerging technologies and architectures that you talked about, starting with virtualization, the software-defined architectures that we see, the move to public and private cloud, containers, but we still have to support a lot of the legacy and physical servers. We still have customers and systems that are deployed out there on legacy Unix systems that are have been running for 20 years and are probably going to continue for another 20 years. In addition to that, we're also seeing new downtime threats and new data loss threats beyond just the ones that you summarized very well as kind of the standard localized disasters. We're seeing some of, more and more frequently these megastorms like the 18 inches of water that fell on Houston just a couple weeks ago. If you're in an area like that, your local protection might not be sufficient if your entire building kind of gets flooded. We're seeing ransomware attacks increasing virtually daily and getting more and more sophisticated. we're also seeing additional things that we have to think about as we move towards cloud. What happens if the cloud vendor has an outage? What happens if the cloud vendor has a cyber attack? And there's things that are kind of beyond our control. So I did want to talk a lot today about cloud backup and disaster recovery because interest is very high. But there are a tremendous number of choices out there for how to actually use cloud to implement a backup or disaster recovery solution out there. So one of the things I wanted to do was walk through some of the customer needs and some of the top questions that you can potentially ask your vendors that you're evaluating for backup and recovery to try and sort out whether this is going to meet your needs. So as we talk with customers, we find customers that are using cloud services for everything from kind of basic offsite storage to long-term retention to archiving to meeting compliance needs to disaster recovery, as well as other use cases. We have customers that are looking at using cloud to be able to cloud burst in case they get overwhelmed on compute capacity. They want to be able to extend their environments into cloud. So there's all these different use cases out there. There's also a variety of different ways that we can implement a backup and recovery solution in cloud. You can implement your own private cloud solution using software or appliances that you acquire from one of the traditional backup vendors like the ones that are on this call today. You can actually look at implementing cloud backup through a purpose-built cloud that many of the backup providers are providing as well. So it's all kind of in one throat to choke for your local protection as well as your off-site cloud protection. You can look to actually implement things with the hyperscale clouds, the Amazons, Microsoft Azure's, Google, Rackspace, IBM, et cetera. Or in many cases, we have service providers, managed service providers who are kind of spinning up their own kind of micro clouds and providing cloud backup and DR services out of their facility to their customers. So with all that in mind, you have to ask each of these vendors and look at each of these solutions through a set of questions. And to be honest, these questions are designed to kind of not steer you into one exact solution or another. Truthfully, the solution that's right for you might be different than what it is for another customer. And Unitrends actually supports all the different variations, so I really don't have a kind of a horse in this race. But I do think it's important to kind of walk through these different questions, including a few questions that some of the vendors that you talk to may hope you don't ask. These questions kind of cut through some of the marketing things that are out there and kind of get to the heart of how some of these solutions actually work. So let's kind of dive in real quickly. First question is certainly on security. When we're talking about cloud solutions, security tends to be, if not one of the top concerns, it's certainly within the top 2 or 3. In the past couple of years, we've seen it drop from what was obviously the top concern to be a little bit lower. People have gotten more confident in the cloud solutions out there. But one way to see how serious your cloud vendor is about providing a secure solution is to ask, is the vendor at least SSAE 16 SOC 2 compliant? Kind of a long term, but it's essentially a regulation that's been set up by the Auditing Standards Board of America, and it's for defining how service companies report on compliance controls. And there's 2 service org control levels. SOC 1 actually talks about the controls for financial audits. SOC 2 is really the one, if you're interested in security, availability, privacy, the integrity of the vendor, that's really the one you want to dig into. And just about any cloud vendor that is serious about security will be able to provide you with a SOC 2 compliance report. And it's a very easy way to kind of cut through some of the marketing on what's going on there. Second question, I kind of put this as the Ghostbusters question. Really ask, who are you going to call when something goes wrong? Does the vendor actually have their own cloud, or are they actually relying completely on a set of partners to deliver that cloud? Because if your solution, particularly for DR, is split between 2 different vendors and something goes wrong, Are you calling the backup solution vendor? Are you calling the DR vendor? Are you talking to an MSP instead of the actual company that you bought the software from? Also look at what software they're actually using inside their solution for replication, NDR, and testing. Is it their own software, or is it something that they've licensed from somebody else? If it's something that they've licensed from someone else, what happens if there's a bug in that software, or there's a new feature request? Are they going to be able to keep up with where you want to go? By looking at a single vendor solution, it means you can eliminate the finger pointing, and you can have a single vendor to work with when you have a recovery event. Last thing you want to be doing kind of at 2 a.m. in the morning when you're trying to recover a system is trying to juggle between different vendors. There's a second part to this kind of who you're going to call, just like there were 2 Ghostbuster movies. There's kind of a second part of this as well. And that's who you're going to call for support. And is there somebody you can you call for support? Does the vendor actually offer white glove services where there's going to be somebody who's going to pick up the phone 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, or are they basically just going to shove you through kind of real-time communications through chat or email, and you have to hope that someone's going to get back to you quickly? All the solutions are not created equal. You really want to look for a solution that does have that white glove experience, does have the capability of providing somebody to work with you throughout the entire experience, setting up your cloud backups, setting up your DR to make sure that your environment's going to recover exactly the way you want it. If your applications have dependencies on order, what they have to come up with, the vendor should be working through those intricacies with you. They should be there to actually help you test the environment. They should be there when you actually need to rely on it and recover, or to run DR tests later on, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annually, however often you want to run. Third question is really one about asking, can you avoid what's sometimes known as the cloud trap? Most cloud solutions, it's very easy to get your data in. They're not always the easiest solutions to get your data out. So once your data goes into the cloud, how easy is it going to be to move it somewhere else if, for some reason, you want to move to a different environment? Does your vendor that's providing the backup protection offer cloud choice so you have the flexibility now and in the future? What you actually have for a solution now, you might want something very simple and basic to basically just do some long-term retention locally. But you may know that 2 years from now, you're going to be deep into an AWS implementation, and you may want to rely more on an AWS environment for your backup and recovery. Are you going to be able to seamlessly move between those different solutions, or is it going to be painful? You really want to ask that question up front before you put many terabytes of data into a cloud solution. Next question is really one about cost. How am I charged? And if you look at the different costing options out there for cloud in general, but particularly for data protection and disaster recovery, it varies widely. In some, you're paying for the amount of data that you're protecting. So if you actually have 10 terabytes locally on premise, you only have to pay for 10 terabytes, even though you may consume many more terabytes in the cloud as you do long-term retention. Or are you paying for every gigabyte or terabyte that is consumed in the cloud? And the difference in that can really add up over time, particularly if you have multiple copies of your data that you're keeping for long-term retention. The other thing you want to look for is, are there any hidden fees? Are they going to charge you to simply access your data? Some vendors will charge you if you access your data more than once a quarter. So if you actually have a couple different instances where you need to pull your data down, they'll hit you with an extra fee. Are they going to hit you with network fees on top of the storage fees? Cloud storage for many of the solutions can seem inexpensive to start, but can really shock users when they get their bill over time. The same thing is true for DR architectures. Some DR architectures are pretty simple in how they work. They essentially charge you for all the compute, even if you're kind of running in standby. Others use what's sometimes known as a pilot-light implementation, which allows you to actually kind of keep things in storage and quickly spin them up and not have to pay for extensive like EC2 compute in an Amazon environment. Bandwidth considerations is another thing to consider. If you're moving lots of data to a cloud solution, if you have multiple terabytes, getting that data set up, particularly initially, getting your initial data set up in the cloud, can be a challenge, particularly if you do not have a particularly fat WAN connection. But even if you do, sending multiple terabytes, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 terabytes over a WAN connection can take days or weeks in some cases. So you want to look for a solution that actually helps accelerate some of that. Many of the solutions actually have what they call physical seeding, where you can actually ship your data on disk. It's loaded into the cloud, and from that point on, you're just doing incremental updates. You also want to look for a vendor that actually offers things like WAN acceleration and advanced single-pass deduplication, again, to reduce the amount of data that you have to send over the WAN and make things easier. So DRAS, when you look for DRAS, some solutions simply allow you to spin up virtual workloads. Others allow you to basically do virtual and physical workloads. So if you have virtual and physical workloads that you need to protect in a DRAS environment, make sure that your vendor is actually going to be able to support both of them. And make sure that they include not only spinning up your workloads, but they actually worry about spinning your entire business up, including all your network connections, getting your applications up and running. It's no good to just simply boot up a VM and call it a day if all the interconnections between your applications that they need to run reliably aren't set up properly. So last two. One, check your SLAs. Really read the fine print on SLAs. Vendor SLAs, particularly when you talk about disaster recovery SLAs, but also if you look for availability, recovery time, data sovereignty, they vary depending on from vendor to vendor. Some vendors will guarantee what appears to be a very fast recovery time of just a few minutes to get your workload up and running, but when you look at the details, they actually, if you have 100 applications that you need to spin up in DRAS, they actually may look at that sequentially. So they may have a 15-minute or 30-minute recovery time, but if you have 100 applications, it's actually to get your entire environment up, it's going to take you, 5-10 hours. Companies like Unitrends actually will give you a guarantee to be able to spin up in a 1 hour your entire environment. And the last question I want to touch on before just talking briefly about Unitrends is to talk about recovery assurance. And what we mean by recovery assurance, it's something that actually uses automated testing and reporting to validate your ability to recover with 100% confidence. Ideally, you want a vendor who actually offers recovery assurance. And make sure that they offer recovery assurance that actually is able to test end-tier applications, not simply just boot up that your application has spun up and the operating system booted. You want to make sure that if you have applications that have dependencies, that those dependencies are being tested as well. And you want to make sure that they can deliver this through an automated report that comes to your email. So ideally, you want these tests to be able to run every couple days or at least once a week, once a month, so that you know that your recovery environment is going to work exactly as you'd expect. So how can Unitrends help, given those lists of questions? Well, Unitrends has been doing backup and recovery for a long time. We've been in business since 1989. But when we look at the world and how things are evolving, we think it's really time to reimagine recovery for this digital world that we're living in right now. So we actually offer our connected continuity platform that brings together the industry's leading portfolio of cloud-empowered continuity services into a single intuitive platform that gives you the flexibility for what you need now, but also to allow you to expand and grow and evolve over time. We want to basically be able to use the power of cloud, but also support you with what you need on-premise. Make sure that you can kind of gain control over your IT spend and also get complete confidence in your ability to recover for events that actually may happen down the road. So our platform extends all the way from continuity planning through physical and software virtual appliances. It includes cloud continuities for both storage, disaster recovery, recovery assurance in the cloud, as well as doing recovery assurance across the entire solution, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud, all backed up by really awesome support for our customers and partners. So when we talk about our platform, we're essentially talking about 4 main components. One, we want to protect everything you have. We want to be able to provide continuity anywhere you need it, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. We want to guarantee your recovery and continuity. We want to do it all within a single platform. So when we look at our solution, we really do protect everything you have, whether it's physical, virtual, or cloud-based infrastructure. Physical, we protect Windows, Linux, Unix, Macintosh, you name it. Same thing with virtual. We protect Hyper-V, VMware, Citrix Zen Server, KVM. Altogether, we have well over 220 different operating systems, hypervisors, and applications that we actually protect natively within our tool. So pretty much almost anything you're going to have in your environment, we're going to be able to protect. We're able to do that protect you both on-premise and in the cloud. On-premise, we can deploy either a physical appliance or a virtual appliance or software that installs into a Linux environment. In the cloud, we support not only our own purpose-built Unitrends cloud, but we also support numerous hyperscale clouds, as well as the ability to spin up your own second site using our software for a private cloud solution, as well as a wide variety of MSP partners that can provide this for you as well. And when we talk about recovery assurance, we really are differentiated in what we offer. Our recovery assurance allows you to have absolute certainty in your ability to recover. We use automated testing, and we can test both your backups and DR environment, both locally as well as in the cloud. And we do this through fully automated testing that can run as often as you want. If you want these tests to run every couple hours and send you a report that basically says we validated your DR environment and we guarantee that your recovery is going to work, you can set it up to run as often as you want. So you actually have those certified recovery points. So with that, I'm pretty much going to wrap up and pass things over to John. I think we're going to move to a Q&A.
All right, very good. Thank you, David, and thank you all for sticking with us to the Q&A portion. If you have some questions that you would like to ask of our speakers or of myself, please go ahead and get them in the queue. I see we have a few questions in there already, and so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start right in with the question and answer, if it's okay with everybody. Someone said, what about new technology that is representing itself as hypervisor agnostic? Do you offer anything that in your kit, I guess, and we'll start with Arcserve, that will allow me to use the same product rather than having to have a multiplicity of products for backing up, say, a Hyper-V environment and then a VMware environment? Do I need separate software to do that? Let's go to Arcserve first.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, in our case, no, you don't. We support, we're hypervisor agnostic. As a matter of fact, we uniquely support the ability to also provide for cross-hypervisor migration. So you could literally back up a VM of one hypervisor of your choice and restore it in another one of a different vendor. So absolutely, I think it's very important. As a matter of fact, I would also add that if you're considering using a hypervisor data protection solution only, so something that only does one hypervisor or a couple, doesn't matter, you're doing yourself a big disservice. You need to also consider physical, and you need to consider tape support in that whole sort of schema that you're building.
Okay. David, I'm going to throw that question out to you as well. Are you providing multi-hypervisor support out of a single software interface? Do people need to buy different components for the Unitrends solution in order to back up different hypervisors?
No, we support both doing backups through kind of host-based snapshots as well as using agents within VMs. So natively, we support VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix through host-based backups, which makes it very easy to back up those environments quickly. But for workloads either in those hypervisors that we do support with host-based that may need more granular support, or other hypervisors, or other environments that are not hypervisor based, or we support the ability to actually drop an agent into those environments and protect those workloads as well. It's something we actually call deep virtualization protection, which allows us to kind of have the best of both worlds of kind of hypervisor-based protection as well as non-hypervisor-based protection.
Okay, I don't know who this requester is, but he has a bunch of good questions. And his second question is, look, to protect a virtual machine, wouldn't it be better to just use the replication process that's built into the hypervisor? I'm going to throw that back out to you. David, you start, and then I'm going to let, I want some commentary on that also from Arcserve. Go ahead.
Sure.
We actually do rely, and most backup vendors do actually use the native tools built into the hypervisor to kind of guide us in some of our backups to get change block tracking and be more efficient where we can get it. However, if you're just looking at the basic tools that are available from VMware or everything, they are pretty basic. You're not going to be able to do things like instant recovery. You're not going to be able to do some of the more advanced things that most of the backup providers are able to do by just relying on those backup tools. And chances are you're not going to be as efficient with your operation. And really, that's really what a lot of us are trying to do, is make your life a little bit easier.
I understand. Actually, if you have a multi-hypervisor environment, that becomes very problematic. But I'd rather have a tool that's sort of a Swiss Army knife than one that just goes to a particular software stack. Okay, I'm going to ask you both. We were running a little bit long here. If you wouldn't mind, can I ask you to stay on the line for maybe an additional 5 minutes past the time that we were considering closing the event, just to get a couple more questions in? Would you be available for that? Wonderful.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Let me jump to Unitrends. A question has come in to you. It says, how does recovery assurance help with DR testing? What specifically do you do to facilitate the testing requirements of your customers?
So what happens with recovery assurance is, so once your backups, copies of your backup are put into a cloud or into your second site, what we do is we use those copies of the backups and we essentially spin them up in a sandbox environment. And our tool is actually, what you would have done in advance is set up on a per application basis what your recovery point objective and recovery time objective is for each application. And what we do is we actually spin up your application in that sandbox environment, and we test it and make sure that it's meeting those objectives you set up in actuality. So if for some reason you had a bad backup, for example, VMware had some bad CBT bugs a couple months ago, and people had backups that they thought were good. They really weren't. This would actually detect that, because we're actually using your backups and we're actually testing them in the DR environment to make sure that all the dependencies are working. And then we email you a report that basically tells you what your recovery point actual and recovery time actual is. And if it's out of scope, you can do something, when it's sunny out, as opposed to trying to do it at 2 o'clock on a Saturday night in the middle of a storm.
Have you written any kind of papers or resources on that explain how Unitrends technology will help in those circumstances? I have a few clients myself. We could talk about it offline, but if there are resources on your website, are there directions on how to deal with that particular problem? Yes,
we have numerous white papers on that, so happy to send them over to people.
All right. Now, Arcserve, a question came in for you. And this is such a sinister question. It says, what type of deduplication results can we reasonably expect to see with your deduplication technology? I appreciate the sentiment behind this, because so many exaggerated claims have been made about dedupe over the years,
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. I think there's a lot of BS out there, and a few things. Number one, you have to look at how much you have in your source and how much you're actually putting or placing on the storage. That gives you the only true measure of dedupe. The current technologies are global source-based deduplications. Because you're consolidating multiple streams into one bigger box and then deduplicating that does not make it global, and that could be one way to claim some high levels. There's a whole blog, actually, I wrote about this, which I called Fuzzy Math. I'm sure you'll appreciate it, John, and it goes straight at the heart of this question. So if you want to know, just go take a look at our blog. I have published some actual screenshots that we received from customers, and it shows you how much storage they have and how much storage they're using, and that's the best answer I have. One more thing, I think that there's a lot of conversation around disaster recovery testing. It's a great practice, and to clarify something, our technology is called assured recovery. So just want to, it's a trademark that we have. We pioneered this, and certainly provides also for a lot of automation reporting, as well as the ability to tie into high availability with similar technologies where you can even fail over and fail back automatically. So there's a lot going on in that space as well.
Well, in the old days, Arcserve used to be part of a string of products from CA that included a remote geoclustering product. I think you acquired it from Exosoft. Is that still part and parcel of the UDP product that you've got?
Yeah, what we've done with UDP is we actually re-architected or rebuilt the solution from scratch. At the same time, we also picked up a bunch of IP from all of these other technologies, which is why we've actually brought together all of these years of experience in high availability, so Exosoft tape in our legacy Arcserve solution, as well as block level incremental, combined with the addition of dedupe and all of the efforts we have made through the years in simplifying the interface and great reporting. So, see, that's the benefit of having been around for a while in a sense. You can really leverage a lot of IP, and that's what we've done. But I want to be clear, UDP is a net new architecture. It has nothing to do with other legacy solutions out there.
I understand. But I do want to go to Unitrends with the same question, because it used to be that when you were using a geoclustering product, whether it was CA's product or it was Never Fail Groups, Never Fail, or a couple of others, that you had the ability to sort of test and ensure that a failover would occur successfully before you actually implemented the failover, and that dramatically simplified testing. Do you have any kind of expedited ad hoc testing capabilities in Unitrends solution that we should know about that will maybe reduce the burden of testing at Unitrends?
Well, that's really what our recovery assurance technology does. We've had it in a product called Reliable DR that basically automates all that testing, can even automate the failover and failback as well. So that's one method of doing it. If you're moving actually to the cloud, we also have another product called Boomerang, which allows you to kind of move workloads from a VMware environment up into an AWS environment and back as well. And that's actually being used pretty commonly by customers who are actually looking to do DR into an Amazon environment as well. So there's multiple different ways of doing this.
Okay, we're going to keep you on the line because we got another question that's aimed at Unitrends that says, pertaining to exchange data. And I'm not sure I understand what this fellow is asking, but he says, perhaps you do. He says, does the DAG extend into your cloud?
Does the DAG extend
from Exchange? Yeah.
Yeah, they're essentially we can pretty much anything that you have running on premise, we can extend into the cloud. It's one of the advantages of kind of having the white glove service that we do is we can work, our architects for recovery are there to kind of work with you to make sure that your entire environment is set up exactly the way you want, making sure all those dependencies, if you have Active Directory dependencies or anything else, we can basically make sure all those things are working properly, get you set up, test it, know it's confidently running, then use our recovery assurance capabilities to automate that testing so you get regular reports, whether it's once a month or whatever you want. So it is the advantage of actually having that kind of white glove capabilities that we actually have.
Okay, I'm going to throw this question out first to Arcserve, but I'm going to also ask Unitrends to respond to it. It's I think, a really important question. You've heard a lot about linear tape file system from IBM, which is now a standard for use with tape. And it allows you to just basically transition data from the file system that you have directly onto tape, preserving the file system structures, if you will. You can also use it in connection with object storage. But the question is, do you really need backup software anymore if you're able to just write that data from your disk infrastructure over to your LTFS tape?
That's an interesting question. I think it's an interesting question, John. There's a lot more than meets the eye. The way I would answer this is very simple. Let's go back to actually what you were talking about in your presentation to the real requirement. The requirement is not a backup one or a file system one or a tape or disk. Doesn't matter. It's a business requirement. That drives everything. At the end of the day, what matters is that you understand how quickly you can get back on your feet for your critical apps, what is acceptable from a service level perspective, and that dictates the architecture. In some cases, maybe some customers would want to use that as part of their architecture. I would say it sounds to be limited or limiting to me, but there's a lot more that meets the eye, and I think you're going to end up using, at the end of the day, a number of technologies to support your business and to support your recovery. The trick becomes how you can orchestrate them so that they're coherent, which leads to this conversation around unification and really having a solution that will really blend all of these together in a way that really goes back to the question we're trying to answer, which is how quickly can I get back on my feet, and am I protecting my business in an adequate fashion with what I've put in place?
I understand that, Christophe, but I think the question is really, there seems to be this increasingly important connection between archive, moving the data that's less frequently modified and accessed to an archival repository versus, doing the backup of the active environment. And when you think about it from that standpoint, you might be able to clear as much as 70% of the data that's never accessed out of the way so that your backup processes are much more efficient if you implement archive. So I think it goes to the point that these two different questions are asking, which is basically, is archive at all part of the strategy or part of the software set or part of the services? Let me turn to Unitrends for a second. When you have a cloud sitting out there that's offering data protection services, is archive an integral part or another set of services that would be part of that cloud as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I kind of go back to the question, this is similar to what we've heard from companies that are looking to, well, I have a SAN that's basically able to do some replication between different environments. Do I need backup? I'm basically getting multiple copies of my data in different locations. That should be sufficient. I think when we look at a complete business continuity solution, you need to actually put more in place than this simply kind of replicating your data, or even just simply basically archiving it. We do support, archiving, getting your data into the cloud or getting it onto a tape or however you want it. But you need, I think a complete business continuity solution needs to include not only the long-term retention of data for compliance or just for your company policy maybe to archive data for a certain number of years, but you also need to look at what other purposes am I using that extra copy of data for? Am I doing DR with it? Am I going to be doing analytics on it? The whole concept around kind of data copy management and kind of keeping control of the different versions and different copies of my data around I think it's going to become increasingly important as well. And kind of having a central tool that manages all of that, whether it's for backups, for archiving, for compliance, for other purposes. I think that's kind of where the backup and continuity space is going to merge or kind of morph into over time.
All right. This is about all we have time for. We've already gone a couple minutes over the allotted time frame, but I think some great information came through, and there are some really good questions in the queue right now. I hope that our speakers will, as they promised, take a look at the questions and respond back directly to the folks who asked them. They're very good questions. I will respond to one that was directed to me very quickly. Where did the hard drive and SSD or flash manufacturing estimates come from? It's from a presentation that I had with Microsoft. in their from one of their cloud architects who's building the Azure cloud, and he was showing what their concerns were about the amount of data that were coming through. If possible, if I can get a URL, if I can get an email address to go with that, Tracy, I'll make sure that I send a link back to the video of the presentation from that fellow, which is available online. I want to thank our speakers, and I want personally, and I want to thank everybody who hung out for the extra time. And Tracy, I'm turning it back over to you so you can take us out.
Great. Thank you. John, I also want to thank you because you did a great presentation and excellent moderation of the event today. And I'd also like to thank Christophe and Dave, too, because their presentations were great. And we do appreciate you staying a little longer to answer the questions that we had in the queue. And thank you to the audience for attending this webcast sponsored by Arcserve and Unitrends and presented by Redmond Magazine. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.